Hey there. Today I am going to be reading chapters 19, 20, 21 of Maniac Magee. If the wonders of the world hadn't stopped at 7, Cobble's Knot would have been number 8. Nobody knew how it got there. As the story goes, the original Mr. Cobble wasn't doing too well with the original Cobble's Corner Grocery at the corner of Hector and Birch. In his first 2 weeks, all he sold was some Quaker oats and a penny candy. Then one morning, as he unlocked the front door for business, he saw the knot. It was dangling from the flagpole that hung over the big picture window, the one that said Frosted Foods in icy blue and white letters. He got out a pair of scissors and was about to snip it off when he noticed what an unusual and incredible knot it was. And then he got an idea. He could offer a prize to anyone who untangled the knot. Publicize it. Call the newspaper. Winner's picture on the front page. Cobble's Corner in the background. Business would boom. Well, he went ahead and did it. And if business didn't exactly boom, it must have at least peeped a little. Because eons later, when Maniac Magee came to town, Cobble's Corner was still there. Only now it sold pizza instead of groceries. And the prize was different. It had started out being 60 seconds alone with the candy counter. Now it was one large pizza per week for a whole year, which in time made the knot practically priceless. Which is why, after leaving it outside for a year, Mr. Cobble took it down and kept it in a secret place inside the store and brought it out only to meet a challenger. If you look at old pictures in the 2 Mills Times, you see that the knot was about the size and shape of a lopsided volleyball. It was made of string, but it had more contortions, ins and outs, twists and turns, and dips and doodles than the brain of Albert Einstein himself. It had defeated all comers for years, including J.J. Thorndike, who grew up to be a magician, and Fingers Holloway, who grew up to be a pickpocket. Hardly a week went by without somebody taking a shot at the knot and losing. And each loser added the glory that awaited someone who could untie it. So you see, said Amanda, if you go up there and untie Cobble's knot, which I know you can, you'll get your picture in the paper, and you'll be the biggest hero ever around here, and nobody'll mess with you then. Maniac listened and thought about it, and finally gave a little grin. Maybe you're just after the pizza, since you know I can't eat it. Amanda screeched. Jeffrey, the pizza's not the point. She started to hit him. He laughed and grabbed her wrists. And he said, okay, he'd give it a try. They brought out the knot and hung it from the flagpole. They brought out the official square wooden table for the challenger to stand on. And from the moment Maniac climbed up, you could tell the knot was in big trouble. To the ordinary person, Cobble's knot was about as friendly as a nest of yellow jackets. Besides the tangle itself, there was the weathering of that first year when the knot hung outside and became hard as a rock. You could barely make out the individual strands. It was grimy, moldy, crusted over. Here and there, a loop stuck out, maybe big enough to stick your pinky finger in through. Pitiful testimony to the challengers who had tried and failed. And there stood Maniac, turning the knot, checking it out. Some say there was a faint grin on his face, kind of playful, as though the knot wasn't his enemy at all, but an old pal just playing a little trick on him. Others say his mouth was more grim than grin, and that his eyes lit up like flash bulbs, because he knew he was finally facing a knot that would stand up and fight a worthy opponent. He lifted it in his hands to feel the weight of it. He touched it here, touched it there, gently, daintily. He scraped a patch of crust off with his fingernail. He laid his fingertips on it, as though feeling for a pulse. Only a few people were watching at first, and half of them were Hex Angels, a roving tricycle gang of 4- and 5-year-olds. Most of them had sneaker lace or yo-yo knots untied by Maniac, and they expected this would only take a couple of seconds longer. When the seconds became minutes, they started to get antsy, and before 10 minutes had passed, they were zooming off in search of somebody to terrorize. The rest of the spectators watched Maniac poke and tug and pick at the knot. Never a big pull or yank, just his fingertips touching and grazing and pecking away like some little bird. What's he doing? Somebody said. What's taking so long? He gonna do it or not? After an hour, except for a few more fair-sized loops, all Maniac had to show for his trouble were the flakes of knot crust that covered the table. He ain't even found the string yet, somebody grumbled, and almost everybody but Amanda took off. Maniac never noticed. He just went on working. By lunchtime, they were all back, and more kept coming. Not only kids, but grown-ups too. Black and white because Cobble's Corner was on Hector, and word was racing through the neighborhoods on both east and west ends of the street. What people saw, they didn't believe. The knot had grown, swelled, exploded. It was a frizzy globe. The newspaper the next day described it as a gigantic hairball. Now, except for a packed-in clump at the center, it was practically all loops. You could see right through it, and Maniac calmly working on the other side. He found the end, somebody gasped, and the corner burst into applause. Meanwhile, inside, Cobbles was selling pizza left and right, not to mention Zeps, a 2 Mills type of hoagie, steak sandwiches, strombolis, and gallons of soda. Mr. Cobble himself came out to offer Maniac some pizza, which Maniac, of course, politely turned down. He did accept an orange soda, though, and then a little kid, whose sneaker laces Maniac had untied many a time, handed up to him a 3-pack of tasty cake butterscotch crimpets. After polishing off the crimpets, Maniac did the last thing anybody expected. He lay down and took a nap right there on the table, the knot hanging above him like a small hairy planet, the mob buzzing all around him. Maniac knew what the rest of them didn't. The hardest part was yet to come. He had to find the right routes to untangle the mess, or it would just close up again like a rock and probably stay that way forever. He would need the touch of a surgeon, the alertness of an owl, the cunning of 3 foxes, and the foresight of a grand master in chess. To accomplish that, he needed to clear his head, to flush away all distraction, especially the memory of the butterscotch crimpets, which had already hooked him. In exactly 15 minutes, he woke up and started back in. Like some fairy tale tailor, he threaded the end through the maze, dipping and doodling through openings the way he squiggled a football through a defense. As the long August afternoon boiled along, the exploded knot hairball would cave in here, cave in there. It got lumpy, out of shape, saggy. The Times photographer made starbursts with his camera. The people munched on Cobble's pizza and spilled across Hector from sidewalk to sidewalk and said, ooh, and ah. And then, around dinner time, a huge roar went up, a volcano of cheers. Cobble's knot was dead, undone, gone. It was nothing but string. Bugles, cap guns, sirens, firecrackers, war whoops. Cobble's Corner was a madhouse. Traffic had to beep an inch through the mob. Kids cried for autographs. Scraps of paper fluttered down in a shower of homemade confetti. A beaming Mr. Cobble handed up a certificate to Maniac for the year's worth of large pizzas. Maniac accepted it and said his thanks. The undone knot lay in a coiled heap at Maniac's feet. Mr. Cobble grabbed it. Already people were guessing how long it was. It turned out to be 4.5 blocks long. Someone tied it to a stop sign and started walking, and that's how far he got before it gave out. The yelling went on the way yelling does, if only to hear itself. But one person wasn't yelling, Amanda Beale. She was holding one of the homemade confetti scraps, looking at it. Then she was scrambling across the sidewalk, the street, shoving people's legs aside, grabbing more scraps, crying out, oh no, oh no, and then she was running. Maniac saw. He leaped from the table. He picked up a scrap. There was printing on it about Africa. He picked up another. This one mentioned ants. Another, Aristotle? The Encyclopedia A? He followed the scrap paper trail up Hector and down Sycamore, all the way to the Beals' front steps. The only thing left of the book was the blue and red cover. It looked something like an empty, loose-leaf binder. Amanda was hunched over, rocking, squeezing it to her chest. It was my fault, she sobbed. I got careless. I left it in the living room. Anybody could look through the window and she clenched her eyes so tightly it was a wonder the tears got out. More than anything, Maniac wanted to hug Amanda and tell her it was okay. He wanted to go inside, be with his family, in his house, his room, behind his window. But that wasn't the right thing. The right thing was to make sure the Beals didn't get hurt anymore. He couldn't keep letting them pay such a price for him. He turned and headed back up Sycamore. Maybe the man with the can of worms voice was right. Back to your own kind. Back to your own kind. He never got farther west than the far curb of Hector Street because McNabb and the Cobras were there to meet him, grinning, leering, hissing. Yo, baby, we hear you got a little pizza prize there. Come on back. We missed ya. We've been waiting for ya. So he turned and started walking north on Hector, right down the middle of the street, right down the invisible chalk line that divided East End from West End. Cars beeped at him, drivers hollered, but he never flinched. The Cobras kept right along with him on their side of the street. So did a bunch of East Enders on their side. One of them was Mars Bar. Both sides were calling for him to come over. And then they were calling at each other, then yelling, then cursing, but nobody stepped off a curb. Everybody kept moving north, an ugly, snarling, black and white escort for the kid in the middle. And that's how it went, between the curbs, smack dab and down the center. Maniac walked, not ran, right out of town. And then tomorrow we'll start part 2. Thanks for watching.